Robert, welcome back to round two.
Okay.
I'm so glad and grateful that you're doing this with me, and I know people got a lot out of our first communing, in which we learned a little bit about how you have been working with people to create the kind of partnership that allows you to um, do more and be more at the same time, and also meet your intentions. And our intention for today is to talk a little bit about the how that's going to work for us, and then we're going to actually do, and in so doing, model the partnership process that you've been sharing with us previously. Does that seem right?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, good. Well, before we went live on the recording, you were reminding me about how important it is that anytime you do this with a person, it needs to be customizable, that it's always going to look different for different people, and there's no one way to do it right, no kind of cookie cutter approach to this kind of presencing together. So in that light, I want to ask you and then also share with you, where I am, so we
Mhm.
together can figure out how we can serve each other and ourselves in this process.
Okay.
So with that, do you want to just share a little bit about how you're feeling right now and what your sense is about um, how doing this, in what way doing this today how it might look and how it might best serve you?
Well, what I usually do is the first question is how long do you want to take for a check-in?
Hmm.
And when I say a check-in, it would mean that one person is sort of checking how they are and saying that, and the other person is there to be present with that.
So they're
So then,
mostly
so then, of course, it's that there's like one thing. If I feel really off, I might immediately ask for like a 10, 15, or maybe even 20-minute check-in.
Mhm.
Or if I'm really ready to go, I might say, let's do like 3 or 5 minutes. And then, of course, also how much time we have. So I didn't even ask you how much time you want to take for our session today.
Okay, so those are two important and great beginning questions. So let me address the first one in terms of the check-in, how much time. I think for me, just a few minutes of a
Okay.
check-in would work. Would that work for you?
Yeah, and also in terms of us doing this tape, so we don't want to go too long.
Yes, we have
Right.
another aspect to our experience.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So all those aspects are
Mhm.
important to consider.
Right, and everybody is going to have their own time constraints, and that was the
Right.
second question you asked, which is about how much time do we have today. And what I'm thinking is that we have not on the not on the recording, because I'll edit that, but between you and I, we have about an hour today. And so what I would love to do is get practice two times in being with you in this way, meaning that
Okay.
perhaps we could, if you have things that work for you, perhaps we could set up what we're going to do after the first time we connect, then come back, see how that went, and then create a second time, perhaps learning from the first or just following up on the first.
Right. So let's do like, let's say like 3 minutes just saying whatever needs wants to be heard. How
Okay,
does that sound?
great. That sounds great. Would you like to begin that?
Let me begin this.
Okay.
Well, I'm noticing how my energy is, how my energy level is much higher than before we we started talking.
Hmm.
So that already makes more possible of what I can take on or what I want to do. And and then in terms of thinking what I would do, I guess the next question would be how much time do we want to take between our check-ins?
Hmm.
Because that's also going to determine what I choose to do or what I choose to focus on.
Okay, so do you want to just uh, decide
So I'm
that together
asking you
now?
now,
Yes.
yes, or decided together now.
Okay. Well, how about if we spend about 20 minutes
That's
after our first
exactly what I
check-in?
was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, good. So I heard you mention that your energy level was up a little bit as we started connecting, and I wanted to just let you know that I heard that. I appreciate it, and I wanted to give a little extra space if there's anything you'd like to add just on the coming into presence part of our check-in.
I think the next thing that could sometimes be in the same time with the check-in, or it could be a separate piece, would be the defining the project or defining where I want to put my attention for the next 20 minutes, or what I want to get done the next 20 minutes.
Okay, well, why don't I do the first part that you
Okay,
did, and then we'll go to that piece for both of us as well. Okay?
right, because my sort of my mind is going already to that piece, so
Yeah.
I feel very ready
Yeah,
to go.
okay, good. I appreciate that. And the reason that I thought it might be good for me to go next is because I can get very ready too in the way that you're describing, and sometimes that might create a kind of jumping over of where I actually am. And I want to make sure that I start with that, just like you did. Yeah. So is it okay if I do that part of the check-in now?
Of course.
Okay. So I'm aware that I had already started checking in preparation for this time, even before we got on Skype together. I notice that, first of all, I have a little bit of a headache, and I smiled when I saw that that headache was coming because it's what happens, right? We have an expectation that we might be feeling something or another, and then, our bodies just respond the way they do. So I just want to create space of allowing for that headache to be here, and also a recognition that I want to go forward uh, in alignment with that headache, meaning I don't want to choose an activity or something that's going to come from resistance to it or that's going to attempt to override it. I want to be able to, choose something that is going to work with it. Um, but I also notice a certain kind of excitement that I feel. Part of it is just in being present with you, and then also another part of it is that I just got a really good phone message a few minutes before it was time for our call, and so there's these two very opposite things in me right now. One of them is the headache, which is kind of an energy of, oh, and then also the excitement, which is the energy of, wow. And I feel them both in me. One of the headache, of course, is the top part of me, and then the bottom part of me right now is kind of holding the enthusiasm. And I know that I'm going to be bringing both of those to our experience today.
So just, do you want me to say anything or reflect anything, say anything?
I guess, first of all, I want you to know that as I was sharing, I could just see you by virtue of Skype really
Mm-hmm.
receiving what I was sharing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I already feel heard and
Mm-hmm.
connected with and accepted. And so I don't need anything particular in the way of reflection. And I guess I would just say if you have a question about any of that that might be helpful to me, I'd be happy to hear it. And if you don't, then we could just go on from here.
I don't have a question. It all sounds very clear to me.
Okay, good. So, well, thank you for that. And why don't we go on then to the second part, which is um, the direction. We've already specified we're going to spend about 20 minutes, and your mind, as you mentioned, is moving towards that. So, would you like to share a little bit about what you'd like to do and how you'd like to do it in the next 20 minutes?
Yeah, the project I have chosen as we were talking is a painting I've been working on, and and then I just stopped working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, what stops me is the story. I don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and so this would be perfect for me to, even that I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
that I commit to be with this project for at least this 20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and make some moves.
Mm-hmm.
Even, who knows, they might be terrible, they might be wonderful, I don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
But really to commit to be there 20 minutes and find some way forward. Not by
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it, but by making some moves.
So you have that I don't know what to do around this painting, and you'd like to use this time to just make some moves and see where it
Right?
takes you.
And
Yeah.
commit to be there that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not oh, I don't know what to do, so maybe there's something else to play with or something else, but
Mm-hmm.
just be only with that.
Okay. Perfect. That
That's
sounds
the
great.
that's the commitment.
Okay. So, well then, it seems like it'd be good for me to share now what I'd like to do with the 20 minutes. And uh, I'm aware that there are always many things pulling at my attention and proclaiming that they have a priority. And some of them often fall to the bottom of the priority list pretty quickly. So I would like to use this focused and intentional time to go to a corner of my office where there are some unfiled stacks that feel like they kind of impress upon me. They're heavy when I see them. And I'd like to clear up that space and just focus on that. And I'd also like to put on some music during that time, just because I think it will allow me to feel like I'm in a flow and it's a pleasant experience rather than setting it up as a chore only.
So I have only one thing I was gonna sort of say and just see if that's something that might bring something for you.
Sure, thanks.
In the beginning, you said there's a certain readiness you're feeling,
Hmm.
and sometimes if you feel that, you tend to jump over things.
Hmm.
So I'm just wondering if that's something you might want to pay attention to, or maybe it's not even there anymore.
Do you mean jump over in the doing or jump over in the deciding what to do?
Maybe that's I should have asked that question first, because maybe it's not in the doing that you're jumping over. Maybe it's only in the deciding, and you don't. And once you start doing it, you don't. That's not an issue anymore.
Well, I'm just pausing, as I always appreciate that kind of invitation to just check in one more time. And I'd like to go ahead, because I'm learning with you, to 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 stick with the plan and to notice if anything that may show up that I've jumped over, and then
Uh-huh.
use our round one as a learning experience to bring into our round two.
Right. Because I think also it resonated for me because I tend to rush things sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And so one thing I do is each time I want something to be done already, I slow down more.
Hmm.
So I think that's one reason I
Hmm.
brought that in.
Yeah, well, even as you were saying that, that the readiness sometimes gives you an opportunity to slow down more. I took your invitation even a little bit more fully, and I realized that really this is about my space for me, not just that corner, but my overall space. And I'd like it to support me as much as possible in a sense of freedom and openness. So what I'd like to do is just give myself the opportunity to, in the time that we're going to spend,
Mm-hmm.
stick with that corner if it feels right, or if something else calls to me in the space, a shift in where things are, how they're organized, that will just allow me to feel a little bit lighter or freer, to have the freedom to do that either right then in that moment or in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Great.
Good. So thank you for allowing me to get there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess sometimes you leave the Skype open in this situation because we're doing this and recording it at the same time. Why don't we turn off the Skype, and right now I'm seeing what the time is, and you can do the same thing. And how about if I
Okay.
give you a call back in exactly 20 minutes from now?
Sounds great.
20 minutes have gone by, and here we
Okay.
are for our check-in after round one. Would you like to share first and tell me how it went?
Yeah, again, how much time do you want to check in?
Well, since you're going first, let me see with you how much time do you feel would be good for you?
Uh, I think like 4 or 5 minutes, if that's not too much for you.
No, that's
I mean, in
fine.
terms of the recording and everything.
Sure. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So it was very interesting. I mean, the first thing the first thought that came was, oh, I'm glad it's only 20 minutes,
Mhm.
because there was like no thought of skipping out for a while, because
Mhm.
there's enough time. It really was sort of a short time period,
Mhm.
and so I had to go right at it. So I really appreciated that. And then it was like it was sort of a really clear seeing how feeling overwhelmed and frustrated throws off my focus.
Mhm.
And I was really able to manage that well, and just sort of bring myself back to what I want to do.
Mhm.
And then I had like a time where I really felt like I'm moving forward with this. This is really, I'm really know what I'm doing and where I'm
Mhm.
going. And then there was a period where I felt like kind of a little off. Something didn't feel quite right. And then I noticed that I'm getting lost.
Mhm.
Something didn't work, or maybe I'm not sure if I got lost in what I was doing, or if I just noticed that there was something from before that didn't work, and it started feeling like I don't know what to do again. And it was really difficult to make a decision on how to move through this, like
Mhm.
what to do next. And then I did, and then the time was kind of over.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate sort of the new clarity I have about what I'm doing. And I'm still left with a little bit of that feeling, oh, you couldn't do it again. Like you
Mhm.
couldn't get it, or something like, so there's a little bit of that feeling left.
Yes. So is it okay if I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So if I understand you right, towards the end of the time, you moved through that experience, but then the time was up such that you weren't able to take the steps that you had originally committed to taking. Is that right?
No, I did, but somehow that feeling of, oh, I was lost again, or it didn't work again, sort of stayed with me.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm kind of curious about that, because it wasn't like, oh, yeah, I did what I needed to do and I know now what's next. There's sort of an aftertaste of something.
Yeah. Well, when we spoke last time, you mentioned
Mhm.
that one of the things that was important for you is focusing on getting certain things done without necessarily having it feel a certain way
Yeah.
or you thinking a certain way. So I'm wondering,
Right.
it sounds like in this situation you did do what you wanted to do,
Right. Okay. So
and you're noticing the aftertaste.
right. So that's good that you brought that back, because that's good to remember. It doesn't have to feel a certain way,
Mhm. Mhm.
because obviously I did get a lot done in 20 minutes.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I mean, I was able to move forward with this a lot in 20 minutes.
Okay, good. Is there anything else you want to add about that to feel complete in your sharing?
No, I think it's pretty complete.
Okay, good. So, how about if I share a little bit and
Sure.
then we both talk about how we're going to use our second round?
Okay.
Okay. So, the first thing that happened to me is what I imagine happens for many people, and that is life intervenes.
Hmm.
And so we were set to get off of the call and go do our 20 minutes. and I did a quick check of the technology, and suddenly it seemed like there was a glitch, and either our call may not have been recorded, or I was going to have to restart my system. And so I know some nervous energy came up around, what to do. It's kind of like it wasn't a big emergency, but it had that energy of emergency.
Right.
And I spent a minute or so trying to see if I could solve all of that. And then I decided that it was more important for me to complete the experience that we had agreed to. So
Mm-hmm.
I left that in trust that it would all work out. And I'm still crossing my fingers about that. We'll see.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So then I set to the task that I committed to. I I was really surprised at how much I got done in a short amount of time. I didn't, because of that technical glitch, put on any music.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't matter because I felt free in just being given the permission and also having committed to just focus on this one small topic and area of my office. And sure
Good.
enough, by the time that our period was done, I actually completed the whole project. I didn't know whether, it would take a lot of time or a little bit of time, but now I have an area that used to be filled with stuff that now is just the top of a filing cabinet with a printer on top of it and nothing else.
Mm.
And so I feel really positive about that. And the interesting thing is that some of the items I just moved to different places,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't, because they're not visible, they don't weigh on me in the same
Mm-hmm.
way. So I love to look over there like I'm doing now and think, wow, I'm going to keep it like that. That feels freeing. And
Uh-huh.
also, I did file some of the things as well and get a chance to look at some things that I hadn't looked at for a while and make a mental note if they needed my attention. And so all of that was really positive. And then at the end of the experience, I also noticed that while my headache hadn't gone away during that period, it hadn't I hadn't been feeling it as intensely, and it didn't really get in the way.
Mm.
So that's my report.
Wow, it sounds like you got done a lot.
I did, and I really could see how great it was to make the commitment to do that, because if
Uh-huh.
I hadn't used our time to do that, I just would have found many, many reasons not to.
Uh-huh.
And those would have been other good choices. They wouldn't have been procrastinations. They would have
Mm-hmm.
had their own benefits. But this is now something that just allows a little more space and a little more breathing room inside of me when I look around. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
And that's what you said in the beginning, something that stuff that moves lower in the priority list usually,
Yes.
to
Yes.
commit to do that.
Yes. And one other thing I wanted to add is that out of the corner of my eye during our 20 minutes, I did notice that an email came in,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed that first instinctive response, which is, oh, let me check and see what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But then I let that be there for a moment, and I decided that there was no need to do that, and I didn't, and I felt good about that. And I think there was also just something about the fact that I had agreed with you to do what I was doing that made it a little bit easier for me not to go to the habit of the checking.
It sounds like the commitment was a little stronger than if we hadn't been doing this together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for me, that was a benefit of being in partnership with you in this way.
Great.
Yeah, good, good. So how about you for your second round?
I am, and I'm going back to the same project, and I really want to go back, use this time to go back to it, because I can feel myself not wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's just some kind of taste of, oh, I don't, it's too much, it's too frustrating, I don't know what to do, and I keep getting lost with this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'm gonna get much done, but I'm committing to be with this for 20 minutes, even if it's just with my being lost.
Okay. Good. Good. So for me, I want to continue what I was doing because there's another pile. But one of the things in that pile is some old writings from when I was a teenager that I pulled out of my files. I thought it would be interesting to look at. But I haven't looked at those things, and the notebook has been kind of oppressive just sitting there for months. So what I want to do is look through, take out anything that I really do want to look at, and then put the notebook away somewhere so that I get the benefit of having pulled it out without feeling the weight that I just described. So I think that's going to be part of my second round of organizing.
So should we do 20 minutes again?
I'd like to. Would that work for you?
Okay, yeah,
All
works
right.
great.
Okay, so I'll see you
Okay,
in 20
20
minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
We're back from round two. Since you shared first last time, how about if I share first this time? And
Sounds great.
okay. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to continue and I wanted to pay special attention to that notebook of old writings. And I did that, and I ultimately completed my task, which was to put it away. I had said that I was going to pull out some of the things that I wanted to read later, and what happened is I was drawn into a number of things that were in that folder that I didn't know were there, including some papers that I had written in college and some letters to a girlfriend when I was a teenager and some short stories and so I was reading them and I realized that there would be a day somewhere along the line, maybe when there was a power failure or I just needed a break, where I would just slowly go through that whole notebook.
Mm,
There wasn't anything in it that right now said you must read this or keep it out, for reading sooner. So, practically speaking, it's very positive because now there's another filing cabinet with nothing but a computer printer on it, and I even dusted it so it looks very shiny. And I'm aware that that's the corner of the room that my clients look at when they're sitting in their comfortable rocking chair
ah,
here for an in-person session. So the more clean and airy that corner can be, the better for everyone. So I feel very good about that. And then I felt um, a kind of an old internal discussion start to come up in me as I was reading through the pieces because uh, as an artist, in my case it's writing, in your case it's painting, or at least part of it is painting for you. I I always grew up with this sense that you work it over and over again. You finesse it and ultimately you get to something that maybe you've polished it to the point where it shines. It's fully what it is and it really works. And it's very interesting and sometimes painful for me to look at things that I wrote along the years and they so clearly don't work for me, you know. And I started getting into an internal discussion about the why of that. Um, Meaning, could I approach that same subject now and write it in a way that I would think would work for me? And I started. It, there's a feeling sometimes that I will get as an artist that um, I'll never be able to reach what I aspire to. And so I was feeling that feeling along with that thinking. But I was also realizing that that's almost an existential state that would keep me going. And so this 20 minutes also gave me that gift of putting me back into that kind of discussion because ordinarily these days I'm doing things like what we're doing right now and I'm working with clients and groups and it's all about deepening into healing and presence, which is a sacred mission for me. But then there's this other part of my being which is about artistic expression and I got a chance to just hang out there for a little bit and uh, so that was fulfilling even if it was an old discussion and there was nothing particularly new that came out of it, looking at all those old writings brought that back into the foreground for me.
Really, your relationship to your creation.
Yeah, yeah, and especially how it changes over the years, and there's that cliche that that a lot of artists won't go back and read their early works, and even in the case where some people might think it's a classic, the artist at 60 can't stand the thing that that same artist did at 25. So there's also this shifting perception that we have of our own work,
Right.
and to bring that into perspective, there's nothing like reading a poem or a short story that you wrote when you were 15, and so that's where my head was for part of those 20 minutes.
No, for me, I think for me that's it's more like I hope that my success rate is now a little higher than when I
Mhm.
started out painting,
Mhm.
because I think when I started out there was like one, maybe one a year,
Mhm.
and that has certainly gotten better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes I look at that one that I got that year, like maybe 10 years ago, and it's almost like, wow, can I do this now, or did I really get any better? Or,
Yes, sometimes when I look back at something I did, I think I have no idea how I did that,
right,
or I don't think I could do that now. So it kind of goes
right,
backwards and forwards in that
right,
way. Yeah.
right, right.
So, but again, I appreciated the opportunity to do that. That folder's been sitting there for months. Now it's put back away, and I feel good about the corner. I feel good about the little tour I had down my writerly memory lane,
Right.
and I'm interested to hear about your second
And
20 minutes.
I like your little bonus of dusting.
Yeah, yeah, I got
It,
that
it
in there.
it tells
Yeah,
me that you had a nice energy doing what you were doing.
yes. Although I dusted with my hands, and
Uh-huh.
and so I may have just like pushed a dust ball somewhere, but at least there's not like a film on top
Right,
of the cabinet.
right.
But I'm okay with my imperfect version of dusting.
Mhm.
So now, how about you? How was your second 20 minutes?
Well, the experience was I looked at what I'm working at, and I had immediately this, I don't know what to do. And then I just really very quickly was able to pull myself together and know exactly what I need to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is to really focus on very small steps. So it was almost like blocking out like 90% or 99% of the project
Mm-hmm.
and just focusing on that one area and deciding on one thing to do and doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing that for a while, it really changed the way I felt in terms of being grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I was really able to just do one little thing at a time, and it really added up.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, what I most, I totally like what I did. I totally like what I was able to do in those 20 minutes. But what I even appreciate more is that sense of feeling grounded that
Mm-hmm.
I somehow lost in my, I guess, getting stuck in my head with I don't know what to do. This is frustrating. It's more than I can handle, and all that those stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So something about the process and in the second round, it sounds like created a sort of funnel effect where all that thinking and wondering went down into just let's do this one thing,
Right.
and that was satisfying,
Mhm.
and it changed the way you felt about the whole thing too, it sounds like.
Right. And then again, I appreciate having you with me because this has been a project that I think just the thought of being with something so frustrating made me not want to touch it for weeks now.
Mhm.
And so this was really a great gift for me to just do something that wasn't so easy to do on my own and put my focus on that.
Mhm. So So it turns out it was a good choice of activity.
Yes.
It used the communion that we had to
Hmm.
positive effect.
Well, it was also a conscious choice to choose something that I haven't been able to do on my own.
So there's a good point. It may be an obvious point, but people who are watching may think not only should I do this and how should I do this, but what should I do it with? And
Hmm.
if it's something in your life that you could and would do easily on your own,
Right.
then there's no reason to bring it to this kind of partnership.
Right.
Yeah, and in both of our cases, very different. Yours was about artistic creation, and mine was more about organization and
Hmm.
clutter. But
Hmm.
both of us chose something that we most likely would not have accomplished had we not brought it to this
Right.
experience. So I think that's really important to highlight, and probably a good place to end too, because I, I'm I'm thinking that if someone has watched this all the way to the end, that might be a good question. What especially would be uh, a good way to begin to experiment with this? Where would I like to start? And then of course there's the other question, which is the who with, which we touched on in our last recording.
Hmm.
And if I could wave a magic wand, I'd already have that website in place where people could find one another. But for now, maybe they could also, having watched you and I, reflect on who in their life might be able to meet them in this way. With whom could they talk and explore the way we're exploring? And that maybe would give them a really good point of reference for who would be a good partner.
And I also find it interesting that even that we had such different projects, there's still a resonance in, I guess, some struggle or some, I don't know, I don't want to call it struggling, how to be with one's emotion, one's being able to focus and all that.
Yes, that's a great point too, and I think I'm always drawn to the idea, and we may have talked about this before, that every kind of creation shares the same essence. So it doesn't
Mm,
matter whether it's a software engineer writing code in a cubicle or
mm,
Rodin carving out of marble. There's
mm,
still, what do I need to do now?
mm,
What comes next? And how do these millions of choices that I'm making moment by moment begin to flow into something that ultimately is what I want to complete? And
right.
so the two people do not have to be focusing on similar projects. All
Mhm.
they have to be willing to do is bring their presence and their openness and this approach to whatever it is that they're undertaking. Yeah, good, good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me today and giving people an opportunity to see it in action. And based on their response, we'll figure out, if and what our next round is in bringing this to the world.
Thank you for being with me.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.